The laughter in the showroom echoed longer than Ethan expected. "Fix my Porsche and I'll marry you," Claire Kingston said with a playful grin, folding her arms as several employees chuckled around her. It was supposed to be a harmless joke. Claire was the CEO of Kingston Automotive Group, a woman known for her confidence, sharp business instincts, and quick sense of humor. Ethan Carter, meanwhile, was just a mechanic in oil-stained coveralls, standing beside a classic 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS that had defeated every technician in the building. At least that was how everyone saw it. Ethan forced a small smile and lowered his eyes. He had spent most of his life being underestimated. As a single father raising his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, he had learned not to take comments personally. People looked at his worn clothes, rough hands, and old pickup truck and assumed they already knew his story. They never did. Lily stood beside him holding her teddy bear, staring up at the beautiful white Porsche. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Daddy, can you fix it?" she whispered. Ethan looked at the car. The engine had been examined by specialists for weeks. Expensive diagnostic equipment had been connected and disconnected. Reports had been written. Parts had been replaced. Nothing worked. The Porsche would start, idle roughly for a few minutes, and then die without warning. "It's probably impossible," one technician muttered. Another shrugged. "The owner is losing patience. We've tried everything." Ethan slowly walked around the vehicle. Instead of looking impressed by its value, he studied it the way a doctor studies a patient. Every scratch, every sound, every detail. Years earlier, before life became a struggle of bills, night shifts, and parenting alone, Ethan had spent time restoring vintage European sports cars. It had been his passion before responsibilities pushed dreams aside. Most people at the dealership didn't know that. To them, he was simply the hard-working mechanic who stayed late and never complained. Claire watched him with mild amusement. "You really think you can find what my experts missed?" she asked. Ethan rested a hand on the Porsche and smiled politely. "I don't know," he replied. "But sometimes people stop listening to a machine after they've spent too long trying to fix it." The room grew quiet. Then Ethan reached for the rear hood latch. What happened next would change far more than the fate of a broken Porsche. It would begin a chain of events that none of them, not Claire, not the technicians, and certainly not Ethan himself, could have imagined. Ethan pulled the rear hood release and carefully lifted it open. The showroom lights reflected off the clean engine components, making everything appear almost perfect. At first glance, there was no obvious problem. No broken belts, no loose wires, no leaking fluids. Several technicians watched from a distance with folded arms. One of them smirked. "Good luck. We've checked every inch of that engine." Ethan nodded politely but said nothing. He wasn't interested in proving anyone wrong. He simply wanted to understand why the car was behaving the way it was. He leaned closer and listened. Years ago, his father had taught him something he never forgot. Before you touch a machine, listen to it. Most problems tell you where they are. The memory brought a brief smile to his face. His father had owned a small repair garage in a quiet town. Ethan spent countless afternoons there after school, handing over tools, cleaning parts, and learning lessons that had little to do with cars. Patience, observation, humility, lessons that stayed with him long after the garage closed and his father passed away. "Can I start it?" Ethan asked. Claire handed him the keys. The engine turned over immediately. For a moment it sounded healthy, but Ethan noticed something others had overlooked. The idle wasn't steady. It rose slightly, then dipped. A tiny hesitation, easy to ignore unless you were paying attention. He crouched beside the engine and closed his eyes. The technicians exchanged confused looks. "What is he doing?" one whispered. "Listening," another replied. After a minute, Ethan shut the engine off. Instead of focusing on the expensive electronic components everyone had already tested, he began tracing the fuel system by hand. He checked connections, hoses, and fittings one by one. Nothing. Then he spotted a small component tucked behind another assembly. It wasn't visibly broken. In fact, it looked almost new, but something felt wrong. He removed it carefully and examined it more closely. A hairline crack, tiny, almost invisible. Yet under pressure, it could easily create the exact symptoms the Porsche was experiencing. Ethan looked up. I think this is the problem. A few mechanics stepped forward skeptically. That's it? One asked. Ethan nodded. Sometimes the smallest failure creates the biggest headache. The room remained quiet. For the first time, Claire's playful expression faded. She wasn't laughing anymore. She was genuinely curious. And as Ethan held the tiny damaged part in his hand, he had no idea that fixing the car would be the easiest part of the journey ahead. The replacement part arrived later that afternoon. It wasn't expensive, and that made the situation almost embarrassing for the team that had spent weeks searching for the fault. Ethan carefully installed it, double-checking every connection before lowering the hood halfway. A small crowd had gathered around the Porsche by then. Word had spread quickly through the building. The CEO was watching. The technicians were watching. Even office employees had found reasons to walk through the showroom. Lily sat nearby in a chair, swinging her legs and hugging her teddy bear. She looked far more confident than her father felt. Ready? Claire asked. Ethan nodded and slid into the driver's seat. He turned the key. The engine came to life instantly. Everyone waited. 10 seconds passed. Then 30. A minute. The rough idle that had troubled the car for weeks was gone. The engine ran smoothly, producing the deep, steady sound Porsche enthusiasts loved. One technician stepped closer, disbelief written across his face. No way. Ethan listened carefully before gently pressing the accelerator. The response was immediate and clean. A few employees began clapping. Others joined. Within moments, applause filled the showroom. Ethan felt his face grow warm. He wasn't used to attention. Most days he simply did his job and went home to help Lily with homework, make dinner, and prepare for another early morning. Claire, however, seemed fascinated. Not because he had fixed the car, because of how he had done it. There had been no boasting, no attempt to embarrass anyone, no speech about proving people wrong. Just patience, skill, and quiet confidence. She walked toward him as he stepped out of the Porsche. You know, she said, smiling, most people would be celebrating right now. Ethan laughed softly. I've got a daughter waiting for ice cream. That's celebration enough. Lily immediately looked up. You remembered? Of course I remembered. The little girl ran over and wrapped her arms around him. For a moment, the entire showroom seemed to forget about the expensive car. People saw something else, a father who genuinely loved his child. Claire noticed it too. Success and wealth had introduced her to many impressive people, but she rarely met someone who seemed so grounded. Ethan wasn't trying to impress anyone. In fact, he appeared uncomfortable being the center of attention. As employees slowly returned to work, Claire found herself watching him talk with Lily. The Porsche had been repaired, but something unexpected had happened that day. The woman who had made a careless joke was beginning to realize there was far more to Ethan Carter than anyone in the room had ever noticed. Over the next few weeks, Ethan expected life to return to normal. It didn't. The story of the repaired Porsche spread throughout the company. Employees who had barely spoken to him before now greeted him by name. Some asked for advice. Others simply wanted to thank him for helping solve a problem that had frustrated everyone for so long. Ethan appreciated the kindness, but he stayed the same person he had always been. Every morning he dropped Lily at school. Every evening he picked her up. And every night after dinner, they spent time together talking about their day. One afternoon, Claire happened to visit a community charity event sponsored by the company. To her surprise, she found Ethan there. Not as a guest, as a volunteer. He was helping repair donated bicycles for children whose families couldn't afford new ones. His sleeves were rolled up, grease covered his hands, and he was laughing with a group of kids who surrounded him with questions. Claire stood quietly for a moment, watching. This wasn't something he was doing for recognition. There were no cameras, no executives, no publicity. He was there because he genuinely wanted to help. When he finally noticed her, he looked surprised. What brings the CEO here? He asked. Claire smiled. I could ask you the same thing. Ethan shrugged. Some of these kids need bikes. I know how to fix them. The answer was so simple that it stayed with her long after the event ended. Over the months that followed, the two became friends. They shared coffee, conversations, and stories about their lives. Claire learned about the challenges Ethan had faced after losing his wife years earlier and raising Lily on his own. Ethan learned that beneath Claire's confident public image was a woman who often felt isolated by the responsibilities of leadership. Their friendship grew slowly and naturally. No grand gestures, no fairy tale moments, just trust. One evening, as they watched Lily ride a bicycle Ethan had repaired, Claire laughed and shook her head. "Remember that ridiculous joke I made about marrying whoever fixed my Porsche?" Ethan chuckled. "Unfortunately, yes." Claire smiled. Turns out the car wasn't the thing that needed fixing. Ethan looked at her curiously. "What was?" "My habit of judging people too quickly." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lily raced past them, laughing, and both realized the most valuable things in life aren't wealth, titles, or luxury cars. They're character, kindness, and the people who stay true to themselves no matter who is watching. Moral lesson. Respect is earned through character, not status. The people who quietly do the right thing often leave the biggest impact on others.